The morning mist clung to the rolling hills of rural Kentucky as Thomas Hartwell made his usual rounds. At 63, his weathered hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking the livestock that had become his only companions since Martha. Past 2 years ago, the October air was crisp, promising an early winter. His boots crunched on the frost-covered ground as he approached the old chicken coop. At the far edge of his property, a structure he rarely used anymore, since switching to free-range farming. But today, something was different. The padlock that should have been rusted shut was new, and strange sounds came from within. "What in the world?" Thomas muttered, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. As he drew closer, he heard it clearly, muffled crying, children's voices, weak and frightened. His heart hammered against his ribs as he fumbled for his keys, hands trembling not from the cold, but from a growing sense of horror. The door creaked open, and Thomas stepped back in shock. 6 children, ranging from what looked like 5 to 12 years old, huddled together in the corner. Their wrists bore rope marks, and their clothes were filthy and torn. Empty food containers and water bottles scattered around them told a story of minimal sustenance. "Dear God," Thomas whispered, immediately pulling out his phone to call 911. The oldest child, a girl with tangled brown hair, looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much. "Please don't hurt us, mister," she whispered, instinctively pulling the smaller children closer. "I'm not going to hurt you, sweetheart," Thomas said, his voice gentle despite the rage building inside him. "My name is Thomas. I'm going to help. You, all of you." While waiting for the authorities, Thomas brought blankets from his house, wrapping each child carefully. The youngest, a boy no older than 5, clung to Thomas's jacket with tiny, dirt-stained fingers. "What are your names?" Thomas asked softly. The oldest girl hesitated, then whispered, "I'm Emma. This is Jake, Lily, Marcus, Sophie, and the little one is Timmy." Her voice was hoarse, as if she'd been crying for days. 20 minutes later, the gravel driveway filled with police cars, ambulances, and social services vehicles. As the children were gently coaxed into warm ambulances, Detective Sarah Mitchell approached Thomas. "Mr. Hartwell, we're going to need a full statement. Do you have any idea how long they might have been here?" Thomas shook his head, watching as little Timmy reached out for him as the ambulance doors closed. "I check this area maybe once a week. They could have been here, God knows how long." As the convoy of vehicles disappeared down his long driveway, Thomas stood alone in his yard, the silence now feeling heavier than ever. But something had awakened in him, a purpose he hadn't felt since Martha's death. The Mercy General Hospital buzzed with activity as medical staff and social workers attended to the 6 children. Dr. Jennifer Reeves, the head pediatrician, had seen many cases of abuse, but the condition of these children shook her to her core. Dehydration, malnutrition, and clear signs of prolonged restraint. She reported to Detective Mitchell, "But physically, they'll recover. It's the psychological trauma that concerns me most." In the children's ward, Thomas sat beside Timmy's bed, reading from a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, one of the few children's books he'd found in Martha's things. The little boy hadn't spoken a word to anyone else, but he seemed calmer when Thomas was near. Detective Mitchell entered the room with news. "We found them, Mr. Hartwell. A couple involved in a child trafficking ring. They've been using abandoned properties across 3 counties. Your quick thinking saved these kids from something much worse." Thomas nodded, but his attention remained on Timmy, who was now coloring with crayons the nurses had provided. "What happens to them now?" "That's complicated," the detective admitted. 3 of them have families we're trying to locate. The others, including Emma and Timmy, were taken from different situations. The foster system is overwhelmed, and finding a place that can take siblings. "I want to help," Thomas said suddenly, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. Dr. Reeves, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "Mr. Hartwell, that's very kind, but fostering traumatized children requires specific training. Home evaluations, then I'll do whatever it takes," Thomas replied, looking up at her with determination. "I have a big house, land, and more importantly, I have time. These kids have been through hell. They deserve better than being separated and shuffled around. Emma, who had been pretending to sleep in the next bed, opened her eyes. You really want to help us?" Thomas moved to her bedside. "Emma, I know you've probably heard a lot of promises from adults that were broken, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you and your family stay together." For the first time since the rescue, Emma smiled, just a small one, but it was there. Over the next few days, Thomas threw himself into action. He contacted family services, began the foster certification process, and started converting his unused bedrooms into spaces suitable for children. His neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, a retired teacher, volunteered to help with tutoring. "You know what you're getting into, Thomas?" she asked as they assembled bunk beds. Thomas paused, screwdriver in hand, looking out at his vast, empty land. "Martha always wanted this house to be full of children's laughter. Maybe it's not too late for that." 3 weeks later, the old farmhouse that had been silent for 2 years now echoed with the sounds of life. Not all the children had come to stay. Marcus and Sophie were reunited with relatives, but Emma, Jake, Lily, and Timmy now called Thomas's farm home. The transition wasn't easy. Jake, 8 years old with sandy hair and suspicious eyes, refused to eat meals at the table, hoarding food in his room. Lily, 6, had nightmares that woke the entire house. Emma shouldered responsibilities far beyond her 12 years, constantly checking on the others. And Timmy still hadn't spoken. Thomas found his patience tested in ways he never expected. One morning, he discovered Jake had taken apart the kitchen radio, its pieces scattered across his bedroom floor. "Jake, what's this about?" Thomas asked, keeping his voice calm. The boy looked up defiantly. "You're gonna send me away anyway." "Everyone does. Figured I'd break it before you could take it back." Thomas sat down on the floor beside him. "You know, when I was about your age, I took apart my father's tractor engine. He was madder than a wet hen. He picked up a piece of the radio, but then he sat down, and we put it back together. Want to try?" For the next hour, they worked in companionable silence, Jake's walls slowly lowering. Emma struggled with different demons. Thomas found her one evening in Martha's old sewing room, staring at family photos on the mantel. "She was beautiful," Emma said quietly, touching Martha's picture. "That she was," Thomas replied, joining her. "She always said this house needed children. I think she would have loved you kids." "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked suddenly. "Really doing this?" Thomas considered his answer carefully. "Because every child deserves to know they're safe, they're wanted, and they belong somewhere. And maybe because you kids are saving me as much as I'm helping you." The breakthrough with Timmy came unexpectedly. Thomas was in the barn, milking Bessie, the old cow, when he felt small arms wrap around his leg. Looking down, he saw Timmy's tear-stained face. "I want my mama." The little boy whispered his first words since the rescue. Thomas set down the milk pail and lifted Timmy into his arms. "I know you do, buddy, I know." As autumn turned to winter, the children began to heal. Jake discovered a talent for fixing things and spent hours in Thomas's workshop. Lily started speaking about her dreams instead of just screaming from them. Emma began acting like a 12-year-old instead of a parent. And Timmy started calling Thomas Papa Tom. The first snow of winter blanketed the farm when Mrs. Patterson arrived for their weekly tutoring session to find all for children in the kitchen, flour everywhere, attempting to bake cookies. "What's all this?" She laughed. "We're making Christmas cookies," Lily announced proudly, her face streaked with flour. Thomas stood in the doorway, watching the chaos with a huge grin. The house that had been silent for so long was now filled with the very thing Martha had always dreamed of, the laughter of children who felt safe, wanted, and loved. Spring arrived early that year, bringing with it new growth and new hope. The adoption papers sat on Thomas's kitchen table, officially making Emma, Jake, Lily, and Timmy part of the Hartwell family. The transformation in the children was remarkable. Emma had started middle school and joined the drama club. Jake's mechanical aptitude earned him recognition in a regional young inventors competition. Lily was reading above grade level and had made friends with the neighbor children. And Timmy, now 6, chattered constantly about everything from chickens to clouds. "Papa Tom, look." Timmy called from the garden where he was helping plant vegetables. "The seeds we put in the ground are becoming food." Thomas smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. The irony wasn't lost on him. From the darkest place on his property had come the greatest blessing of his life. Detective Mitchell visited on a warm April day, not on official business this time, but to see how everyone was doing. "I have to say, Mr. Hartwell, this is one of the best outcomes I've ever seen in cases like this," she said, watching Jake explain the mechanics of the farm equipment to Timmy. "They're remarkable kids," Thomas replied. "They just needed someone to believe in them, and they needed someone who understood that healing takes time and patience." Dr. Reeves added, joining them on the porch. She'd become a regular visitor, monitoring the children's progress and marveling at their resilience. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, a nightly tradition Thomas had instituted, Emma stood up with an announcement. "I wrote something for English class," she said, unfolding a piece of paper. "Mrs. Johnson said I could read it to you." She cleared her throat and began. "Home isn't just a place where you live. It's where people know your name, where you feel safe to dream, and where love doesn't have conditions. A year ago, we thought home was something that happened to other people. But Papa Tom showed us that sometimes home finds you when you need it most." Thomas felt tears prick his eyes as Emma continued. "He saved us from more than just that chicken coop. He saved us from believing we weren't worth saving." Later that night, after tucking everyone into bed, Thomas walked out to the old chicken coop. He'd converted it into a proper storage shed, but sometimes he still came here to reflect on how much had changed. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister in California. "Saw your picture in the local paper about the adoption. Martha would be so proud." Thomas smiled, looking up at the stars. She would be, he thought. The house that had been too quiet was now filled with homework arguments, bedtime stories, and the beautiful chaos of family life. As he walked back toward the house, he could see the warm glow from the windows, hear Jake's laugh as he played a board game with Lily, and Emma's voice as she read to Timmy. Thomas Hartwell had spent 2 years learning how to live alone. Now, at 64, he was learning something far more valuable: how to live surrounded by love, laughter, and the knowledge that sometimes the most broken things, when given enough care and time, can become the most beautiful. The farm that had once been his refuge from the world had become a sanctuary for those who needed it most. And in saving for children who had lost everything, Thomas had found something he didn't even know he'd lost: a reason to wake up each morning with hope and purpose. 6 children had slept tied up in a chicken coop until a lonely farmer opened the gate. But in the end, they had opened something far more important. They had opened his heart to the possibility that family isn't just about blood, but about the choice to love and be loved in return.